Dear partners, dear colleagues, dear guests, we are glad to welcome you to our event presentation of the results of the study Influence of the War on the Youth in Ukraine 2025. My name is Victoria Demidova. I'm head of the project of support of civil society and youth of the United Nations Development Program. I have the honor of moderating this event today. First of all, we'd like to thank the armed forces of Ukraine for the opportunity to be here and to pay our respects to those who have died in the war of Russia against Ukraine. So please, a minute of silence. Thank you very much. Continuing with our words of gratitude, we are sincerely grateful to our partners, the Ministry of Sports and Youth of Ukraine, for many years of partnership, not just as part of this study, but within a lot of programs, initiatives, projects we've been implementing jointly and successfully. We'd also like to thank the government of Denmark for financial support and for persistent support of Ukraine in during the time of reforms, even in these stressful times of full-scale invasion. Thanks to the partners who conducted the study, the rating Sociological Group, for professionalism and a very high-quality work. I'd like to thank a lot of colleagues, a huge amount of colleagues from UNDP, which reviewed this study, and for this study to be multidimensional, interesting and useful for everyone who works with youth on all levels of youth policy. Of youth policy making. We would like to thank all of the participants, people who introduce change, who create the environment for young people where youth can self-actualize, develop, stay in Ukraine and implement change here. This event happens in two formats today, live in here in this place and with an online stream on social network pages for UNDP, on Facebook in Ukrainian, and on the YouTube channel where it's in English. We also have simultaneous interpretation both in the auditorium and on the stream. The stream is also being interpreted into sign language, which will be with us during the first part of this event. To thank our colleagues, interpreters, for their important and sometimes very hard work, which can make our work more accessible, more widely accessible. Dear participants who are watching us online, you can get involved through comments, share your impressions, your reflections, and ask questions during the event. We will try to answer all of them. The event today will consist of two parts. First of all, there will be the presentation of the study results, war influence on the youth of Ukraine. Then you will be able to, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions during Q&A session, ask representatives of the agency which conducted the study, and maybe to anyone else in the auditorium today. Then we will have a panel discussion with very interesting speakers, key actors of youth policy on the national and local level. You will also be able to ask your own questions for our discussion to be live and dynamic. And before we begin the presentation proper. We monitor a situation for air raid alarms, and if there is a direct threat to Kyiv, we interrupt the event and move on to the shelter, which is right next to this space. Out of here to the right and then to the right again, and then we will continue after the air raid alarm is lifted. If there is no direct threat to Kyiv, we will continue our event today. And now I'd like to move on to the official part of the opening, and I would like to give the floor to the Deputy Minister of Youth and Sports, Ukraine, Ms. Uliana Topoleva. Thank you, Ms. Victoria. Dear colleagues, I am very glad to see everyone here on this event, because it is important for us to talk about the reality as it is, to speak with facts, with studies, with indicators which can influence the decisions which are made on the national and local levels. This isn't the first study dedicated to the topic which we received thanks to our cooperation with UNDP, and this could become a very great tradition, like now when we have a direct threat from the side of the Russian Federation, and during the post-war reconstruction period, to see if all of the challenges are taken into account, or all of the needs and demands of the youth are taken into account when making national level decisions. And I'm very grateful, as a representative of the Youth and Sports Ministry team, I may continue this tradition of cooperation between the Ministry and UNDP and continue discussing such important topics. I think the most interesting thing today would be the presentation of the study itself, and even though I had the opportunity to take a look through it, I am very eager to hear, to see the indicators which will be presented, and also to hear the spot of the study, the recommendations which will be provided. Today, us as a large team of Youth and Sports Ministry, Youth Policy Office, there is also the part of the National Ukrainian Youth Center. Also, there is the head of the Ukrainian Youth Fund, Mr. Mykola Kabisi. It's important for us to take a look at the demands, the requests, this from all sides, so that policy making, implementation, financial support of the youth to be able to satisfy these demands, these requests, requirements, what they provide, what they need. I won't be taking any more time. I hope we will have the opportunity for informal communication after the study is discussed, and like to ensure you that the Ministry of Youth and Sport is always open to cooperation, to build new partnerships, to make decisions which today, right now, can respond to the demands of the youth. I'd like to thank your team, which has been actively investing their human resources into supporting Ukraine's youth. Thank you very much. Ms. Uliana, thank you very much for very warm, inspiring words and for our partnership. I'd like to give Alena Gurso, head of the Group Projects on Democratic Governance and Inclusive Society of UNDP in Ukraine, please. Thank you very much, Ms. Uliana, dear colleagues, dear partners, everyone who is listening us here, offline and online. I'm very glad also from the UNDP to be present on this event, and us here in UNDP believe that data-based decisions are the best kind of managerial administrative decisions, with well-informed decisions, context-sensitive decisions, those that take trends into account, and the study of war influence on the youth in Ukraine, together with the Ministry of Youth and Sports and partners with the financial support of the government of Denmark, have been conducted since 2022. It is a very important set of information which allows us to take a closer look at the situation and understand how we can adapt policies, international programs to better satisfy the needs of the youth. We've seen great examples of usage of this kind of data to strengthen the program of youth worker and its development program directed at those who work with the youth. The Vidnova UA Restoration UA program, which aims to create opportunities for young people to get involved in the reconstruction of Ukraine, and specifically youth spaces and in Ukraine, and building social cohesion in communities. We've seen how this data helps the Ministry of Youth and Sports to the entire youth community to formulate strategic priorities of the target program, youth program, resilience generation. Thank you very much for being open to this cooperation to representatives of the ministry. And I was asked not to say any spoilers, so I'll leave the numbers to the team that conducted the study. But I would like to reflect on the trends that I've observed during the years. It's very important to see that the youth in Ukraine today encounters a lot of challenges, like mental, physical safety challenges, forced internal displacement, economic challenges, trouble with finding employment, and the period of life when young people make important life decisions became a period of constant adaptation to these challenges, to understand what to do about all of this. But despite all of these challenges, the young preserve their optimism about their future in Ukraine. They feel responsible for the development of their community and their country, and continues to plan the development of their career, their personal life in Ukraine specifically. And it's great to note there is a persistently high level of civic activism, importance of social connection for young people, since in this situation of constant unclearness, constant challenges, connections with your family, with other young people, including those abroad, remains important for mental health and psychological resilience of Ukrainians. We need this data not just to know what's happening, but also to develop programs, initiatives to respond from our side. From our side, we can name a few of them. We've finished development of a specialized course on youth work with the veterans. We see how important this intersection of youth policy and veteran policy, how important it is on the level of a lot of communities. We hope that this work and pilot trainings, which we've implemented together with the ministry, will respond to this kind of request. Also, increased attention to barrier-free access and inclusivity in our communities, which is very important. We've developed a list of recommendations how to observe the principles of universal design in youth spaces, youth centers. And we know that for Ministry of Youth and Sports, it remains a significant priority. Also, economic independence is very important for the youth, and during last year we've been working with ministries, with communities to develop an educational program for implementers of youth policy, to develop the culture of entrepreneurship, including social. We will continue this during trainer programs, and we have other programs like the 2030 program directed at young people in this age bracket, where they make decisions about their professional career, about their professional future. a lot of other initiatives as well. So I will tell you a little bit more because I won't be taking part in the panel discussion. So I emphasized several practical examples, but I encourage you to take a look at this study, to hear the numbers, the indicators we will hear today, and to take a look at it from the practical standpoint. What can we do with this data to formulate a better environment, a better today and a better tomorrow for the youth in Ukraine? Thank you very much to our partners. Thank you to the ministry. Thank you to the study team, rating group, to all of the youth workers, to the community which has joined this work, and to this event today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elena, for such inspiring message. Let's move on for the presentation of the results of the study. I would like to invite Yanukovych, the head of the Sociological Group rating. While Alexei is joining us, I would like to invite the participants online and write down your questions in case you have those during the presentation. We'll have Q&A session. Participants online, you are welcome to write your messages straight away, and we'll try to take all those questions online. And definitely we'll try to. Alexei, you're on. Thank you, Victoria. Hello, dear colleagues. Usually they ask me, what would you study next? I would say that we need to study the future, where people go, what they want, and the youth. This plays an important role because this is the future of our state. And thanks to the colleagues from the Ministry of Youth and Sports, from UNDP, we have huge amount of data. And as Elena mentioned, we observe the trends. This is important because sociology is a great science, great number. But what's important to observe them in the dynamics, to observe the trends. And maybe we'll discuss some critical trends today with the understanding what may happen next. The presentation itself, we approach the youth in Ukraine, 1435, 2050 respondents face-to-face, and we had respondents same age category also, 600 online. What's missing in that? We had 12 focus group discussions with different categories. There were school children, young parents, IDPs, representatives of the territory, and of course, veteran communities. Well, we have much more data in the report, as mentioned by the colleagues, and the key numbers. The first very encouraging thing, your personal vision of the future. About 80% of those who live in Ukraine, the youth in Ukraine, assesses encouraging future, and was a little bit some preservation from the youth, but 60% assess as encouraging, and 20% from the youth outside Ukraine who have not yet decided yet. This is the first thing which is catching the eye. And the challenges, the main concerns, current concern, on one hand, we have more or less classical list of issues for youth in UK: healthcare, and mental health, physical security, limited money. But now I would speak more about the youth, not in Ukraine, but I see a big difference in the responses in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine. Outside of Ukraine, youth is much more concerned, lack of money. When we think that there the situation is much worse. Mental health, health-wise bigger. Physical safety is definitely higher in Ukraine, but self-development, the indicators are twice higher outside Ukraine. Negative impact of media, choice of future profession, access to good quality healthcare, so housing, employment, loss of employment. So the challenges for young people outside Ukraine much more. This is for those to know who's still considering moving out of Ukraine. Which skills you would like to develop with the reference to your plans, future plans? Here the list is plus minus the same, but the numbers, if we compare the responses to use outside Ukraine, there's a big difference. Stress resilience, they think that should be developed. Entrepreneurship, communication, flexibility, leadership and social inclusion, emotion, productivity. Just reading those responses, we understand how modern life for users is much more modern. For those in Ukraine, yeah, they also consider creativity, entrepreneurship skills, critical thinking, but their answers is much more reserved. Outside Ukraine, they feel the need new knowledge is higher. And we asked to name 3 most attractive professions for young people with general rating plus minus the same. Business, entrepreneurship, designer, IT, lawyer, managers, commercial entrepreneurship and design and computer art profession. This is the higher choice for use outside Ukraine. So we see a big diversity for young people outside Ukraine. We also observe the trend in Ukraine about the place of labor. They won't like to be in the private sector. There's an increase for the public and civil society sector, probably because of the good compensation. But anyway, the private sector is the main one where the use goes. The essence of the accessibility level. And that observes 3 things which differ use in Ukraine and outside Ukraine. If we plus minus leisure, participation in civil society, good quality healthcare services, good quality of utilities, that's rather good, with some reservations. Opening your own business, renting, buying own house is not assessed that good. Outside Ukraine, use as leisure, definitely high, good quality education, and good compensation and employment. So this is again a reminder that level of salary is a challenge. There is work, but whether it's available for our young people who are outside Ukraine, the priority for the upcoming 5 years from those goals, the difference between those who are in Ukraine and outside Ukraine, there are different. Financial independence and self-realization became the top priorities, but stay outside Ukraine, only 33% would like to stay. And we'll discuss the migration issues. So at least 1/3 of Ukrainians would like to stay outside Ukraine. very important section on the health issue. There's a big difference. In general, you can see that almost 60% the respondents in Ukraine did feel panic or but the indicators outside Ukraine are much more 18 in Ukraine, but 35, almost twice higher. The youth outside Ukraine feel concerned. And there is probably the reason whether you feel lonely, lack of communication. In Ukraine, 54% outside Ukraine say yes, lack of communication. They feel lonely. They are separated from their environment, from their past. This is what can be the main concern, the main concern for our young people outside Ukraine. And respectfully, as a consequence, whether you feel like you need a psychological support, 80% in Ukraine say no. Only 38 young people outside Ukraine. So every fifth person in Ukraine would like to have a psychological support, and twice more, 42% definitely would like to have that. From those who already asked for the support, yeah, there's some fluctuations. So it does make a big difference in Ukraine, outside Ukraine. Why they don't apply? They don't know where to go. And they don't have the money for the consultations. And with this, I think many specialized organizations could help our young people to deal with that issue. The experience and social adaptation. What happened to you or to members of your family for the past 12 months? I would call it like a usual household issues in Ukraine. Outside Ukraine, we get very different answers. What happened to those in Ukraine? Mental health, deaths of friends, of family members, loss of income, separation with the family, blackouts, all this is. But outside Ukraine, mental health is much higher. The loss of income, separation with the family. These are the leading concerns. Separation with friends, family, and of course the relocation outside Ukraine. Are you happy with the level of your social adjustments in the host country? In principle, half responded yes, but I was struck that only 40% said definitely yes. It's a very low. It looks like some assistance is needed. 42% admitted they have not adjusted to the host country. How would you assess the situation whether you are welcomed in the host country, local population, the young Ukrainian? Roughly the same. So negative 6 and 10. Mostly good assessment or neutral as a minimum. Whether you applied in the host country to the organizations, we provide different services for the development of youth. And 35% responded yes, 60 said no. I think it's a good where they applied. There's a big spectrum: educational establishment, civil society organization, support centers for the IDPs, volunteer organization, local authorities. Migration. This is a very sensitive issue, especially for young Ukrainians, and probably less sensitive for the youth outside Ukraine. But this is something we need have to look at, especially the authorities, whether you plan to come back to Ukraine. This is what we ask the young people. Only 22% definitely yes. 31 definitely no. 33 said we haven't decided, and 14 said we haven't decided yet. Difficult to respond. This is the answer, whether it's negative answer, but every fifth who would come back, knowing that the war started the 5th year. This is a good sign that they will half 33 plus 14. I think half of those who have not decided yet. There's a huge resource for us as a country should engage for the return of our young people, and this the trend, return back home, we have negative trends and this is the important to observe the trends, and we were back to so a year ago at least 1/3 of young people outside the country said that we would come back. Only 22 now, and we had in 2019 31 definitely would not return. Every year, this indicator will come down if we don't have any process which would impact reintegration. And we're not talking not only about young people, but every Ukrainian. Whether you want to leave your settlement, 27% yes, want to leave from their settlement, 70 no. On one hand, if we observe the trend, the decreasing, which is good, but let's analyze. A young person is a mobile individual who wants to move, who wants to, and look at the pre-war indicator, only 40% said who want to leave their settlements. I think for the youth is a great indicator. Everyone leaves, parents move to another region to look for a better place to make more money. But the war narrowed these opportunities. So in only 1/3, 30% said that yes, they wanted to live. Now the indicator is even lower. But on the other hand, this is people adjusted to the war in Ukraine, and no panic to run away. Where they want to leave from their settlement, those 27% to the European country, half, and to other non-European 9%. So 60% of those who want to leave their settlement, want to go outside Ukraine from 27%. There's a 16% of young people want to leave the country. The others, they would go to other region, either city of Kyiv or regional center, the mobility inside the country. On West, young people in Ukraine, how often you traveled outside your region for the past 12 months. Roughly at least half of young people over the past 12 months left their region and half did not leave. So basically they didn't leave their region. And I think this is not a good indicator, but again, from our studies, all the Ukrainians pre-war time, 80% of young people did not leave. So this, now. Talking about the mobility, so the comparative, this is good. Whether you want to migrate out of Ukraine, we asked Ukrainians.
I'd like to concentrate on the answer. 14% have said certainly yes, 15% more likely yes, but these are the same as undecided, and the positive would be probably the 68, almost 70% of young people in Ukraine who say they would rather not emigrate from Ukraine. I think this is a positive indicator because what is 14% of certainly yes. Before the war, the readiness to emigrate out of Ukraine was pronounced by about a quarter of Ukrainians, not just the youth, all of Ukrainians. From 25% to 14% is a wonderful indicator. On the other hand, we'd like to recognize that those young people who wanted to leave have already done so. Why do you want to leave abroad? To earn money, military fighting in Ukraine, no opportunities for work, which is pretty much the same as want to earn money, and the threat to personal life and livelihood, which is the same as military fighting in Ukraine. So these are the two motives that move people abroad, money and safety. And the first thing for the first place for the youth is money, opportunity to work, self-actualize, to work on a highly paid job. And safety is a bit lower. If we were to analyze this if we were to bring this into a cluster of a certain answer, there would be a bit less. But among Ukrainians overall, not the youth, I know rather that it would be safety. What would influence your decision to return to Ukraine? Ask those who have ask those who were abroad. We received a mirror response. The first place is safety in Ukraine, second, development of Ukraine, third, potential for employment, which is the same kind of economic response as the previous one. But I would also like to note every 5 young person abroad who noted that returning to Ukraine they would consider that if they could influence change in society. This is a realization on hand that the state needs you, and second of all that you can influence the state, which is a great indicator. Did you visit Ukraine at least once during your stay abroad? Also very interesting statistics. Approximately 45% of young people who are staying abroad during the year, well, rather, at least once have returned to Ukraine, which means that they are not breaking off their connections with the state, meaning with Ukraine, which means that they have family, friends in here. There is some connection, and there are still ways for to maybe potentially return them. 54% have said no, which is a troubling indicator. But can we influence this somehow? Possibly not. But the half which does come back sometimes, this is something we need to take note of. National identity. The best marker of national identity is language in Ukraine. It's great to see that about 60% at home, with friends, with family, in their everyday life, use Ukrainian. The dynamic on this indicator is lacking, same as last year, but in work, school, university, we observe an increase in usage of Ukrainian. So Ukrainian as official is moving along rapidly is spreading rapidly in our country, and on lack of dynamics of communication with friends or family. Let us take a look at the indicators. 2021, only 40% of young people used Ukrainian in Ukraine with their friends or family. 60% now, which is 1.5 times increase. There's the importance of usage of Ukrainian content, buying Ukrainian goods, speaking in the national language, knowing and respecting history of Ukraine. We see that everything related to national identity has either increased or remained the same, meaning it was important before, and reductions. A lot more young people who are staying abroad objectively is talking about this because it's hard for them to visit historical locations in Ukraine is not possible because they're not in Ukraine. And speaking Ukrainian is also not, they have less opportunity for that because they are abroad and they are obviously using the language of the country they're staying in. But the indicators are pretty good overall. Geopolitical orientation, trust towards institutions. I'm looking at Victoria. Is she not stopping me? Am I not taking too much time? I'm trying to speak a lot of very dynamically. Your support of Ukraine joining the EU, the NATO, wonderful numbers, 49% certainly support, 26% more likely to support, 75% total, 3/4 of young Ukrainians support EU's entry into the EU, 69% a bit lower support NATO's NATO in Ukraine. Our youth outside of Ukraine is even more supportive of Euro-Atlantic movement, and which means that they support this, and it would make it easier for them to stay in these other countries. But looking at the dynamics, makes our optimism a bit more cautious, because the support of NATO support was 67%, not 60%, and EU 83% and not 75%. So in 1 year we have a bit of a reduction. Maybe because all of these integration processes usually, so to say, are stalling. We haven't come any closer to neither the EU or the NATO. But what was NATO and the EU in 2021? Young people supported it, but with even lower indicators. And Ukrainians, before the full-scale invasion, also had even lower numbers of support of EU and NATO ascension. So it's positively clear, but there are some concerns. Do you support the idea of full ban on Russian cultural space, music, literature, cinema, TV, blogs? On one hand, almost 60% of young people in Ukraine, over 50% of young people abroad support this rather radical step. A large percentage, both in Ukraine and abroad, are against such a ban. But the dynamics, and we see that the dynamic shows a certain reduction or a certain spread of Russian cultural influence, or maybe in Russian language, of the Russian cultural space. We set the term specifically to that. If last year only 22% were against this ban, now it's almost 40%, almost twofold increase. This is something we have to pay attention to. To which degree do you trust the following institutions? Young people do not show much of a difference from the average Ukrainians, both in Ukraine and abroad. These are about the same responses. Armed forces of Ukraine, civil society, volunteer organization, almost total support. President of Ukraine, mostly trust. Then it's rather restrained, but it's police, local authorities, judicial authority, mass media of Ukraine, and the less trusted authorities of Verkhovna Rada. These numbers have been the same since 1991. We don't even have anything to comment. But I like to emphasize that from a quarter to a third, sometimes up to 40% out of the youth in Ukraine Vance said it's hard to respond, so people are a bit more removed from the situation in the country, and so to say they cannot describe their attitude good enough. So participation of young people in civic and volunteer activity. Did you do any volunteer work during the last 12 months? We can see that 72% of young people in Ukraine have taken part or have been taking part before, but abroad is 48%, a bit less than half, but the level of activity is rather high, which is much higher than among the average Ukrainian population. A quarter of young people in Ukraine have not taken part in volunteer activity during the last 12 months. And almost a half of young people, young Ukrainians abroad, did not take part in volunteer activity. Who got you involved in volunteering? Personal initiative is the answer number one. Friends, acquaintances, relatives, number two. There is also their educational facility, work colleagues, civil society organizations, etc. Among those who did not take part in volunteering, which are the main barriers? Number one is lack of free time. Second is lack of experience or skills. For young people abroad, it's a lack of information about volunteer initiatives, lack of interest or motivation, mistrust towards volunteer initiatives, the feeling that volunteering doesn't change the situation. So it's the examples of cases are very important to keep up the level of volunteering among young people. They're demonstrating what has been done, what has been fulfilled, and how helpful this was for the country. Which activity you're most interested in overall, not about volunteering, but overall? You can see that all Ukrainians, young people in Ukraine and abroad, have about the same indicators about internship programs, youth exchange, art projects, culture projects, public events, a large spectrum of activities where youth would like to take part. But for those of our young who are abroad, they would be very interested in art and cultural events, and also public events, festivals, fairs, and internships. So training, exchange, is very relevant for the youth abroad. Do you know about the existence of Ukrainian organizations in your cities? We've asked young people abroad. Over half have said that they either know well or have heard about some organization. 41% haven't heard, which is also a reserve for our organizations, civil society organizations, or those who are helping to be able to involve young people abroad. Are you a member of such an organization? 7% have said that they are an official part of it. 18% take part in some of their activities, but aren't part of the organization itself. And 70% aren't members of such an organizations, which is fine. If you have involved, then what is the form of your activity? Participation on cultural events, 63% volunteering, 43%. Educational programs, a third. Wonderful. There is a space to grow. If you haven't joined, traditionally Ukrainian answer is don't have time, don't see any benefit for myself, and number 3 is not interested. Are you ready to get involved in person to restoration processes, which is a question of those who are in Ukraine? We can see that on one hand 40% certainly would want to, and 37% more yes and no, and only 18% are not ready to join. But we should look at this in a dynamic which is incredibly positive. What does this indicate? I believe that if we are speaking about restoration processes, rebuilding processes, the 5th year we've been talking about this, but this was a 4th full year of the war, and the 4th year of the war, young people already would see the opportunity to improve or rebuild their communities, which could be implemented now. So we have stabilized during wartime, and we are already giving affordance to some things which can be improved or rebuilt in their communities. And do they feel like they can influence their communities themselves? It's a bit more restrained, but still positive. 18% certainly feel like they can influence change, affect change in their community. 26% say more yes than no. It's over 40%, even though last year it was 32%. Why? How can this increase be explained? The study was conducted at the end of this year, and in summer we also had a card space in almost all, or rather card Maidan, which there were protests in the cities, in all the cities, which also is a clear demonstration of capacity to enact change. So you can be seen that this is possible. Why do you feel that you can't affect change? I don't have enough knowledge or experience. My opinion won't change anything. I don't know how I can influence. I can't see examples of successful influence. Don't trust decision-making processes. So it's the same as all of our advice to our government is openness, showing results, efficiency, and constant informing of residents, young residents in this case, about the opportunities and the results. Which civil society institute activities have you taken part during the last 12 months for Ukrainian residents? The answers are very different, but first of all, those who didn't take part constitute about half of the respondents in Ukraine. Others did, but in very different sectors like school or university self-governance, sport organization, volunteer organizations related to education, charitable, humanitarian organization, youth and children's organizations. And thank God I've almost reached the end. I have the final 2 slides with some recommendations, which you will be able to find in the report, which should be published now or will be soon. What I'd like to say, first of all, we need to prioritize initiatives and develop target programs on different thematic programs, directions, broadening availability of services. Here is more about people with disabilities, veterans, other categories which can't maybe find themselves in the publicly available options, but they can find themselves in something themselves. Strengthening the capacities of centers, hubs, youth councils, financial institutions, methodological support, developing clear mechanisms and programs of youth involvement in decision-making and on restoration, where youth can influence the situation in their community. Broadening informational awareness-raising work on the presence of youth centers, informing, first of all, strengthening gender-oriented approaches, and of course regular studies continued. I have to say that as a sociologist, and about youth abroad a little bit. We believe that they require support of official programs, formats for constant dialogue with young people abroad through our associations, civil society organizations, etc. In their countries of stay, development of communication initiative directed at the coverage of the value of refugees and diaspora for Ukraine, capacities for youth who return in positive cases, which they can associate themselves with. Support of joint initiatives of youth in Ukraine and abroad. Those people who go to Ukraine at least once a year. This is also an opportunity for youth communication, creating opportunities for long-distance involvement of youth in Ukraine to influence change, which is for this other half, which does not return. And continued monitoring of attitudes. Thank you for your attention. I'm done. But if you have any questions, since I hasn't been chased off the stage, but I would be glad to answer any questions about sociological data. Thank you, Alexei. Please, a round of applause for the presentation. We can move on to the next slide right away. And here we can have a QR code, which... Oh, something went wrong. Yeah, there it is, which will lead you to the full version of the study, which you can then download and share. Alexei, you don't go away too far. You hear?
I'm sure we'll have questions. Alexei shared the general recommendation, but we encourage you to download the report, share with your professional communities, discuss it, and develop your recommendations, which will be useful for the communities which you work with. Now we have 15 minutes for Q&A session, and we have already a line question, but I suggest we start offline, and my colleagues will help me. I see some hands. Irina, Safir. Let's pass the microphone. Irina Bodna, youth worker, expert in youth. Oh, I'm still interested to know why, when we speak about the youth in Ukraine, we speak about the youth which lives in the European Union only. We have Georgia, Moldova, US, UK. Whether we think about those youth as well. I think that's a question to my colleagues from UNDP. It's not a problem to do a study in the UK, non-European Union country, Canada, US, but in percentage, share-wise, much less. So, yeah, let's compare 1 million in Germany, in Poland, and Czech Republic, 3 leaders, and 10,000. And even in Hungary, at some point, we compared to Poland and Germany, very little. And again, we speak about young people. We covered basically every European Union country, even with the smallest share of our refugees. I would like to mention there's a rationale, limited resources-wise, and the logic which Alexei mentioned, that was the logic to follow for it. Next question. Anton, you have a comment? I have a question to Alexei. What do you think if you split your analytical material per regions, the results might be very different region to region? In our presentation, in the reports, we have the split. I didn't mention that in my presentation. You see, the time for the presentation was limited. So if I would elaborate on that, the presentation will, in general, there is no traditional split which we were used to before the full-scale invasion, the east, west, capital, rural area. The traditional split does not exist, but there is pro-regional features close to the contact line and further Center, Kiev, Western Ukraine, and those who are closer to the contact line, where the hostilities can be close, like a kilometer away. Their perception is a little bit different. That does not refer to language, attitude to Russia as an enemy, protection of Ukraine, but some observations, some challenges are a little bit different. Thank you very much. Roman Makarchuk, Humanitarian Institute from the city of Bucha. Your personal surprise during this study, what in this study was something which surprised you, of course, feeling lonely, this young people outside Ukraine. There's not just mental health support, but other issues. That's all there, but feeling lonely. That was. It's not on the surface, and we picked up that again thanks to our colleagues who insisted on that question. This is a unique, but I would like also to add that the difference. The motivations, incentives to stay outside Ukraine, better education, healthcare. So, but if there's money, the opportunity to earn more. But when you say, it's the same. Also, the problem does not mean that you leave and all the problem. No. The roads are better, the safety is higher, but whether you can achieve that being lonely, this is an issue. Thank you very much. Over there. First of all, a great presentation. The question about migration. You are a professional. What do you think that what the statistics would change if we were able to deal with the fear with mobilization inside the country, outside the country? The fear of mobilization is the statistics of youth leaving Ukraine after the law was introduced. I don't have the number with me, but we're talking about dozens, thousands of young boys who left. What is bad? A lot? Yes, it's a lot. This is our future, which we have to take care of. Whether it's a big number, high share, if compared to 27, 28 million of adults in Ukraine, that would be 1, 2, or 0.5%. I'm not ready to give you the exact numbers. But just analyze the arithmetic. Mobilization is not that, but security, opportunities. It's not just those who are 25% Ukraine who wanted to leave Ukraine before the war to be employed. Yes, they got this opportunity. The drivers are different. It's not just this is a comprehensive issue. When ask me or tell me what everyone has its own case. There are many happy families. Some women left their husbands who were not that good, but found new families, the new spouses out there. Colleague, hello, my name is Darina. We develop a team of youth students organization worldwide. It's a very interesting study. My question is about the methodology. 600 and in Ukraine 2,000 plus. whether 2,000 responded area 3 or 2.2 and 1% higher. It's not an issue of 600 or 2,000. Sociology allows at least 400. That would be at least 5% error. So we would not get a big difference if we go, and this is something I recommend to the colleagues to do, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. You would see the difference because someone who would go to Ireland or UK, there's different perception. The migration perception, the Baltics and Ireland, there are some specifics, something to observe. But I would also, in Italy, Eastern Europe, there might be the different perception. There are some specifics. I want to compare Ukrainians in Ukraine, Ukrainians outside Ukraine. Should we compare the same number? No. The difference are. We have a question over there. Yeah, it works now. Aldana Khmelnik, Civil Society Energy for Recovery and Development. We work with the communities on the development recovery, and there's always a challenge. Active use, engagement of use in the community. You give an interesting data about use when they return the prerequisite for the printer, but maybe in the expanded study, you have this data, whether the use is ready to be engaged to the recovery process, what they want to do, what are the obstacles. So from the perspective of those who are in Ukraine and those who are outside of Ukraine, in one of the recommendations, you write, provide access, give the opportunities for the distance engagement, remote engagement for the decision-making process. Thank you. It could be the next point in our next studies. Readiness for the recovery in Ukraine, engagement in the community. It's 20% of those who are outside of Ukraine indicated that one of the drivers, the opportunity to make an impact. This is a high indicator. If we find those drivers, the incentives to promote, to engage these young people to the activities, benefit of Ukraine for the improvement, what are the obstacles? I think that should be a separate study. Why don't you speak English? Why don't you do this? Why don't you study? Oh, I don't need that. Indeed, this. When we work in the communities, we feel that how youth wants to be there, and we want to see the numbers and the study in the point of growth. What do we need to do that this youth is actually engaged for the changes in our country? There are some numbers. We need to go for a deep dive. Thank you. Ms. Rasul, I have a question to you. Traditional split of Ukraine does not exist, and the specifics of the policies to work a specific territory. So what works in Kiev does not works differently on other. We're talking about government authorities, social benefits. I'm interested to hear your opinion. So is there a need to consider specific approaches on the level of the legislation, government policies to use in the territories close to the contact lines in terms of the education and the universities and the shelters, digital services, access to internet? So people have different opportunities there, and social structure usually prefers to leave those territories. So whether this is a problem or close to the contact line and far from the contact line. We do understand that after the war, those regions which suffered a lot. Contamination. So if the war ends today, it would be difficult to restore. So from all the data you collected, I'm interested to know, from my personal opinion, I made a presentation to this. So not possible to use the navigator and making presentation in the basement. Yeah, it sounds specific. So legal initiatives, probably yes, but probably local authorities would be the entry point. They understand that they have lack of labor force for some specific professions and engagement, and the economic dimension that would motivate the youth to stay. Security is an important driver for the younger generation. It's a little bit lower than for the adult population, but economic dimension probably would need a lot of attention. And this is about the compensation for the education, for housing, landing for the youth to stay in a community close to the contact line, which like Nikopol, which is under constant shelling, who would stay there. This is a big problem for a city, and it was a good city, and we have lots of cases like this. Unfortunately, I think local authorities would be the entry point for the reforms, for the changes, to keep the youth in the community. Thank you very much. Now we have some questions online related to the methodologies, how the study was carried out outside of Ukraine. Interested to know about the methodology, the mechanism, how it was noted, more on this, and two questions about which community of Odessa region participated from Odessa, and how many communities participated, and which countries already was mentioned, that how many Ukrainian responded. On methodologies, this is the slide about the methodologies, everything described. Ukraine, the government-controlled territories, 3.1% error, face-to-face. In Odessa region, roughly about 5 to 7% of Ukrainian population. Not ready to give you the exact number from Odessa region. Not ready to. Of course, not every community is in Odessa. The youth outside every European country. UK is not a part of European Union, and the area 4%. So the area between 2000 and 600, 1.1. This is on methodology. I decided to take a microphone because my concern about the discussion when it goes into refers to one group of use. I would like to thank you for this comprehensive study, but in our heads we should keep in mind the picture with the basic data about the use in Ukraine. The beginning of 22, colleagues would confirm that. At the beginning of 22 in Ukraine, we had about 9.5 million young people. Currently, the year 25, a little bit higher than 7.5 million. If we speak about the countries, whether we speak about European Union or we don't have the data on all the countries. We have some data on Eurostat, but on other countries, there is no statistics available specifically on the use, on temporary residence, on protection, no data available. But we did some estimates, about 2 million young people outside Ukraine. It's important for us to keep a focus if 2 million young Ukrainians are outside the 7.5 young people in Ukraine. And the discussions like this, we should keep a focus on what's happening in Ukraine. This is very important, not to lose this focus, not to speak about just one group of young people. Occupied territories, we did some estimates. This is 700,000 young people.
It's important to take into account the youth which have moved from damaged communities and have the IDP status. It's a little bit above 2 million young people. And when we take all of these pictures into account and see the influence of war on these groups, it's a very different picture for all of them. And these several tens of thousands who went abroad after the introduction of this norm of free travel for young people 18 to 22 is not something we have to emphasize our limited resources. Rather, we should take a look at those young people who remain in damaged communities, who can't leave it, they don't have any support in receiving communities like for housing, etc. And as soon as we resolve the issue of high demand for psychological support for young people who are abroad, we have to understand that this means that they have adapted, and the indicator we have on whether you want to come back, this indicator of young people who want to return will reduce even further. It's great for them to they have adapted, but will lose the opportunity to bring them back, and they have to understand that that we are waiting for them here. There are things we want to take into account based on this basic statistic, and we very much like to start these discussions with that specifically and to take this kind of basic data into account. Thank you very much, Ms. Ilyana, for this very important comment. And we will ask two more questions from two more online questions and move on to the next part. And the following two questions are related to the coverage of the sector, where there's a difference between men and women. Question number one: is there any information about for gender desegregated data and other indicators like oblast, urban, rural population, young youth with disabilities, etc.? Is there a difference between young men and women who live in Ukraine, young men and women who live abroad? Well, this is a rather generalized question. Well, you see, in the broadened report, we have a lot of statistical data on the structure of the selection, etc. You can take a look at this. And on certain differences, I didn't elaborate on that because for lack of time, but there is a question in this question. Men have adapted more on the level of social adaptation, can feel themselves better abroad than women. So they've shown more adaptability. And if you have asked organizations which ask for help in your country of stay, women have asked more than men. There is this disaggregation in every question, and but there is some difference, but not much. It is present in the full response, and we have a gender dimension of the. We have the chapter on gender dimension of the report, which shows these differences, some of which Alexei mentioned. The final question, Roxana Avramenko, Frontier Institute, can we say, and based on your data, there is a new formula of circular migration formed? What does it mean, circular? Like going in a circle? I don't feel like this half of the young people who have during the year comes back to Ukraine and then comes back abroad. These are the people who are continuing their connections. 22% are likely to return. So they likely to return. Is this a circular migration? Well, only 6%. If I'm not mistaken, very often migrate abroad, move to Ukraine, or abroad to Ukraine, to abroad, etc. 6%. So maybe this 6% is the answer to the question of circular migration. So we unfortunately couldn't respond to all online questions, but we will come back to them in the comments. Thank you very much for your presentation, Alexei. Round of applause. And while we are preparing to our next part, I would like to emphasize once again that full results of the study can be seen on in the report, which is available now, and also if the research community is listening to us other than the report and infographics, we have published the tables. If you love numbers, you can see them there. So, and once again, I encourage you to download this study, discuss it, share it with your colleagues, and create your recommendations on how this study can help you with your work. And now, thank you very much. Now we are moving on slowly but steadily to a very important part of our event, the panel discussion, when we will be talking about the results of the study, its connection to local and national policy, and the strategy of youth involvement and keeping in touch with young people who are staying abroad. For this discussion, I would like to invite very interesting speakers, Ms. Uliana Tokareva, Deputy Minister of Youth and Sports of Ukraine, Mr. Anton Orekhov, First Deputy of the Zlatopil Mayor in Kharkiv Oblast, Kharkiv region, Ms. Anastasia Raldugina, Director of the Youth Cultural Center in the city of Samara, and Mr. Jan Errol Ruzhitsky, Youth Delegate of Ukraine to UN for 2025-2026 and Head of the Youth Council within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Can I also get a chair as well, please? Thank you very much. So, dear colleagues, all of us have seen optimistically, like we've seen a rather complicated situation of how war influences young people both in Ukraine and abroad. The goal of our discussion is to look at these results through the prism of your work, your roles, your experiences, see different forms, different successful forms of youth involvement, both in Ukraine and abroad. Our discussion will be built as following. I have several questions prepared for you, but I would like for us to have a lively discussion. We see there's a lot of interest, a lot of questions from the audience, so I will ask the first round of questions from myself, and then we will give the audience the chance to ask their questions and share their comments. For us to be on time, you'd like to have until the 5 minutes, under 5 minutes to this. Uliana, based on the results of the study which show changes in preparing for the future, which are the key priorities of state youth policy you outlined for the next few years, and how the state can best support youth in the questions of self-actualization and development? Thank you, Ms. Victoria. We have 5 minutes to share. Oh, for each of us. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for this very important work, the team that work on the study. Of course, I would like to go in depth, as dear colleague would say, to have every direction spread and how did this happen, what really makes young people make these or that decisions. I hope we will have this opportunity to talk with the youth openly about the reasons which make them make this or that kind of decision. As you have said, and Ms. Elena has emphasized this as well, that this isn't the first study conducted on the topic of the war's influence on the youth in Ukraine, and we can take a look at this dynamically, when the concept of the state target program and the program itself, Youth in Ukraine, Resilience Generation with G30, a lot of decisions were based on last year's study. So a part of these studies is integrated in the state targeted program, where there are 7 main streams, including those related to young people abroad and economic independence, barrier-free access, etc., etc. And these are the things which youth are most interested in, troubled by, and we have to address economic independence of youth, which is part of a lot of programs, which is the Youth Guarantee EU initiative implemented in Ukraine. We have a lot of hopes for this program because we can see that mental health of young people requires support. Also, when a person can't see the future here, where all they see is war and total ambiguity, and it's unclear, they can't see what they would like to do, what kind of education they would like to get. So this concentration on creating the vision of the future for every 14 to 35 in Ukraine is very important, and economic independence of youth is very, very important. And we're not just basing it on this specific study. There are other studies, and here it's very interested. We're in young people in self-employment, working for themselves, which also demonstrates more responsibility and the readiness to be responsible for their own life, and this means potentially taking responsibility for their own community and the country as a whole. What is important for us as well is that youth infrastructure should be developed further in Ukraine, and we understand that not a lot of young people know about youth infrastructure, youth centers, youth spaces. Not a lot of communities have them, we have to be honest. Like in the Khmelnytsky Oblast, only 4 youth centers and spaces are registered officially. There are probably a few more, because not everyone have stated outright that these centers were created in their communities. But despite the fact that we emphasize the importance of young people for Ukraine every time, for every community, we are not investing a lot in the youth taking into account the capacities which we do have despite the war. Another important direction of the state target program and of the study conclusions, this will be the last statement of mine, is that young people, although we keep repeating this, young people has to take part in decision making, etc., which is a bit of a tired mantra by this point, but we have to really involve youth in advocacy, in decision making, through creating youth councils or through other formats. There are no elections in Ukraine, but we hope that when the next elections come around, young people will be taking part in them actively and will be influencing them on the level of local councils, maybe through some other tools. But one of such important directions we have is support of youth self-governance, so that young people, it feels that like there is a vibe of local authority, so I started emphasizing that. We hope that in every community, in all 900 plus communities on the deoccupied territory of Ukraine, young people come to every community head, every decision making, and say how much money there is in local budgets, which programs were passed, let us do this and that and the other thing. We will plan this money, create youth centers, create youth support programs, and using this capacity, using this opportunity rather, because it feels like I've taken more than 5 minutes. If you're not familiar with the fantastic program of the youth, Ukrainian Youth Fund, which dedicate a lot of funds for youth support initiatives for small territorial communities, among others, please approach Mykola Kabisi, write the Youth Fund, ask them questions. There is time to use these opportunities. Thank you very much, Olena. I think Mykola is in here. Please raise your hand. Oh, you see Mykola's there. Please approach him after the presentation. Thank you very much. And yeah, we are continue emphasizing local authority, and I would like to give the floor to you, Mr. Anton. We have seen this kind of national perspective, national priorities. You have a bit of a different context, most likely, and differing thoughts. There's Latopilia communities located in a frontline district of the Kharkiv Oblast, and you feel the influence of the war, not just for the youth, but the community as a whole. What main youth-related challenges you do have? Maybe you have successful practices of how you involve the youth and formulate youth policy. Thank you. We would like to thank the organizers for getting us involved. I'm very glad to be here together with the central authorities, because it is also important to be with our central authority partners, It was very interesting to familiarize myself with the study. It looks a bit more optimistic in our context than in the frontline regions, because why can I say this? Because when developing a new youth support program and the program, we have conducted our own study. 151 persons has taken part, and according to what we have seen, and while we have felt this before, even before the war, the issue of small communities, with small communities, rural territories, is that traditionally young people gravitate towards centers of growth, and yes, young people leave rural communities for urban ones. Europe faces the same issues, but this issue became sharper, much sharper during wartime. We feel it much the same, and of the main results of this study, that only 60% of the respondents believe that they see their future within their community, which is really sad, actually. young people of school and after school age. They show even more of this, but about the active youth whom we communicate with the most, the stats are much more unfortunate. Of the 10 which we've been discussing this question of future, 8 are ready to leave the community, and of them, of those 8, 2 are seeing themselves abroad. So that's the unfortunate statistic. And why so? Of course, the permanent stress felt by 47% of respondents, which is typical to communities in the wartime, and because we're closer to the front line, have been almost at the front line in 2022. Of course, the situation has stabilized a little bit. Who wanted to leave have done so, but young people still don't have this feeling of perspective, potential of a future, of a safe future in this community, which influences their decision-making on what their future should be. A rather significant indicator is a lack of feeling of subjectivity, self-identification, and closeness to the communities. It is very important for us if young people do identify themselves as Ukrainian, which is great, but if they don't identify with their community, they are somewhat of a lost generation for us. What to do about that? What to do about this? What are you doing with this? Even before the war, we had one of the first youth hubs opened in Ukraine, in Kharkiv Oblast. This happened in 2017. We had a youth center, Komora. We implemented a participatory budget, which had both authors and voters for the projects, young people aged 14 and up. And we have implemented a lot of youth projects like that, but this activity during wartime, though we haven't stopped gathering youth participation projects, there is a reduction in activity, which means that subjectivity and the active youth group is reducing.
We've introduced before the Youth Council, and now we want to restore, because the Youth Council mostly consists of the students who left and are not in the community, not present in the community. We'd like to focus on probably engagement with the Youth Council of people 25 plus or more mature, who know, who grow in the community, who know what they want. Another challenge, I think, generation gap between 14, 18 and 25, 35. They don't talk to each other, and when the very young generation plan its future, they don't want that their opportunity, what's available here now, and for them that might be important to talk to one another, to exchange experience, to have to develop the vision of the future, vision of their future. And this is part of our work where we want to engage intergeneration exchange of experience as such. For self-realization and for vocational training, which does not exist in the community. The vocational training is not there at all. And regardless of the terms of the Ministry of Education, these are just the beginning of the big changes, but it's not possible to do it the local or something should change. We try to do new programs, educational program, but vocational training, this is something which can keep the youth inside the community, because they leave looking for extra knowledge. These are the areas we want to focus on. Thank you very much for your observation of your context, for keep working, think of the use and looking for other opportunities. Leon already mentioned the youth infrastructure, youth centers, and the importance of strengthening the role of the youth centers, which they play in the youth politics, engage in the youth. And I want to refer to Anastasia. The full-scale invasion made an impact on the activities of your center and transformed the approaches which you had before. Whether the study has any references, if you compare with your center, whether the youth centers got new roles during the full-scale invasion. Thank you for your question. I represent the city authority here, and I will speak about the city authority. About the change of the youth centers, yes, the change is significant. When we spoke to the colleagues about our changes, what happened with our team for our youth, and we see that in the study, and I'll elaborate later. Lots of things changed. And let's start the needs of the youth change. The needs from just entertainment. The youth now values their free time. They have specific requests on what they want to know now. There's a great demand on the war, how to deal with media literacy, the participatory tools. They want to make an impact, and they want to see the opportunities. This is from our communities. We had 900 respondents. This is a big number for us. We had our studies. So all of them mentioned these issues, and the results do refer to the big study. What changed our team? We made a professional growth. We have to provide mental support for our youth. We should be ready to provide first aid assistance. I cannot say that we were doing this before, but now this is very important. We also changed our program activities. Almost no funding from the community. We know where all the money go now in the context of the war. Now we are more focused on designing the project. We apply for the grant programs. We try to go for the partnership, intersectoral cooperation. We became more safe. It's cool to be a safe space. We should be a space where the youth not just feels safe, but feels comfortable, where one can be heard, understood, get assistance with the initiatives, with the development, where they would be engaged for the changes inside the community. An important thing to mention, I spoke to the team yesterday, they mentioned it would be cool when the youth center leaves the feeling that everything as in the past. Lots of things changed over this time. We changed, our community changed, the environment changed. But it's cool when they come to the space and see that something is still there as before the full-scale invasion. And it was an opening for me yesterday. Yeah, it's really cool because lots of things which unites us with our previous life. The team changed over this time, but lots of things remain. And when you come and you can talk to someone, and there's memories, joint memory. The audience changed. Lots of veterans. Before 21, there were veterans, but most of the older population. Now we have lots of young veterans. We have young veterans with disabilities, veterans, male and female, cooperation with Veterans Center, Veterans Pay, and that happened that we work with the children of veterans and the children of veterans who died, and IDP use. If we speak about Dnipropetrovsk region, we are sort of a transit city where people don't stay for a long time. They stay for some time and then move somewhere else. Our task is to integrate the youth, even if they don't stay for a long time with us. Thank God that I didn't move anywhere because of the war, and I have a hope that I would not be forced to go anywhere. But as a young person, as I try to show that a young person don't know anyone in the community, I would like to come a youth center or a civil society organization which worked with young people to get this space, environment where I would not feel lonely, where I would feel that I can impact something. This integration is very important, plays a very important role and function. And in a summary, I understand that time is limited. The youth center now is the center of changes. This is sort of resilience point for the youth. It's cool when the youth center where you can come where there's no the blackouts, some problems, but we have light space. It's cool when you get the support, a place to get the support. If we speak about the categories, this is a place where everyone can come. The last comment, we are adjustable, and all our projects and programs are up to date. It's very important to have regular starters. It's cool to elaborate at not only local but national level to have an idea what's happening outside. So something we can include into our activities to confirm, to justify with the needs. It shouldn't be just our own vision of the stuff, but it should be confirmed. Thank you very much, Anastasia. Really enjoyed a place where everyone can come. I think this is a motto of your center. It would be nice to have every center accessible, engaged on different subjects and different categories of use. It's nice to hear that the colleagues do their own studies. It's very important. The national study gives us a helicopter view for the reflection, but local context is different. It's important to know the specific. Now we move to Jan. Jan plays several roles, and I would appeal to one of those. You're a youth delegate to the UN 2526, and secondly, you're the head of the Youth Council under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Probably refer to your identity. These results, whether it's correlate to your experience and different actors, youth policy, the central can play their role to engage young people outside of Ukraine to the recovery of Ukraine. Thank you very much for the invitation. Interesting questions. Let me split those into two parts. We speak about correlation of the results of the study. I look at some of the indicators, and some of them I didn't expect, specifically the indicator in psychological support, what they use in Ukraine, the extent use in Ukraine, means that, yes, this relates to my experience and the use I worked as a youth delegate. I work at a digital platform. I'm a manager of the community there. I interact with the youth. Also, these results, I think, do reflect the current pictures. The active communities feel that on the individual level, people who are very much interested to do provide the support for. Yes, this refers to my experience. If we speak about engagement of youth to civil society life in Ukraine. Suliana mentioned Khmelnytsky, and I was born in Khmelnytsky region. I do remember that 7 years ago, or even 8, the youth center was created in the city. That was the format before even it became a mainstream Ukraine. At that time, we tried to get grants. Lots of applications were submitted to the British Council. It was a good case. There was a team of enthusiasts on site who developed the relationship with the city council, opened a communal enterprise, and started to do good things for the youth and still do those. But if we go for a bigger scale picture, the Youth Council is a new tool for the world, not only for Ukraine, which demonstrates good developments. And I would use some examples to support those who are familiar with the activities of the Youth Council. The Youth Council, under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, was the pioneer, set up a trend with different phases, ups and downs over those years. Luckily, we managed to acquire a reputation within the ministry as such. The colleagues from other departments look at us and understand that they can come to us with serious questions, that we are not perceived as a body which can implement a project or an event. No, we are not an event agency. We are an advisory body. In addition to the projects, an impact to youth policy inside the ministry, and not only youth policy. From 2 big initiatives, I can highlight our study and engagement of youth to diplomatic service. We had 300 respondents, the current students or the graduates or foreign affairs stream, and we wanted to find the answer why youth is not interested to be in the diplomatic service, how that can be changed. We made a package of the recommendations to the ministry, met HR management, and they started to implement most of our recommendations. We'll see what would be the results numbers-wise, but the very interesting fact, the ministry was very serious. That tool demonstrated its efficiency. And recently, there was an interesting case when colleagues from the first European department of the ministry contacted us, and they take care of some European countries, and they proposed an idea of interactive map of elections. They had some interest at the ministry decided to go for the Youth Council. We demonstrated our vision. I think it would be scaled up for the whole ministry. For me, it's just a sign that we turned from a body which didn't know what to do, how to do. We can come to Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, to the Minister himself, to the Minister of the Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine, with serious, specific ideas. We will be heard and we'll get a promotion of. So if the tool is used properly, that's great. But it's very important that it will be a two-way street. It's one thing that the initiative comes from the youth, but on the other hand, there should be interest from the ministry side. There should be a promotion. There should be individual support, the understanding of the Youth Council. It's not a burden, but otherwise a promotion tool, promotion for the ministry's policy. That's a demonstration of efficiency. So was an interesting balance. There was no understanding, but full-scale support through the organizational difficulties. And now we have great support from the ministry staff. But as every youth council, HR issues and the officials support. So someone may be ready at the initial stage, but the situation changes. But for me, this is a tool which has a great future, which will help the youth on the level of the cities, big communities on the regional level, and on the national level as well, for the young people be able to influence the national policy in all these years. Thank you very much, Jan. The interaction, the cooperation, the dialogue, it's not just one initiative from the youth, it's a two-way street. We should go there. And as I promised, we have an opportunity to...
You have the opportunity to get involved in our discussion. If you have any questions or comments, or those who are watching us online, you can leave your questions in the comments and we will voice them. We have one already, I see. Thank you. As a representative of the Youth Council and the Svetoshin District City Council, we are a newly created Youth Council. So I have a question to Mr. Jan. What would you advise to beginners in this sector? And the second question would be, what would you do so that your higher-ups really listen to you as an advisory body? Well, on the first part of the question, I would be very glad to network with other Youth Council and discuss their experience specifically, because the CSOs, I'd like to add, this could be the Ukrainian Association of Youth Councils. I'd advise you to talk to them. They are some of the most powerful on working with both central and oblast and local youth council. So yes, you don't be afraid to ask them any questions. You'll be able to get a direct answer. If we were to talk about the question number 2, it is a bit more interesting, more in-depth. Here's the problem. You can't make a person, force them to listen to young people. You have to take into account the way a public official thinks. There are some very proactive officials who show initiative, who are deeply concerned with their jobs, who work for their idea, and it's great to build contacts on them based on great projects, initiatives, which then can be publicly covered, which would be a great indicator for local central executives. officials rather. There are absolutely inert officials who will work strictly within their sphere of responsibility and would be very skeptical of any initiative where they have to dedicate more effort. If you're taking more with the second kind, you can approach them from the point of view that the main organizational, logistical, documentational issues will be undertaken by the Youth Council, and you won't be putting too much of a burden on them, and you can all package that real nice like that. But this is a temporary solution. You're not changing the perception of your Youth Council, so you need to approach this from the point of view of results. If you have any projects or initiatives you have implemented or plan to implement with a ready result and numbers, you can use that when you talk to people. It would make it much easier. So you need to show the added value of your youth council. How can you be of use to the community, and where you can be helpful with those policies or projects which local authorities already have. Yes, thank you very much, Jan. Let us leave a bit more time for other questions, maybe, possibly. We do have them. I see Mykola has raised his hand. He'll go first, please. Yes, good afternoon. Mykola, head of the Youth Fund, Ukrainian National Youth Fund. We are the first organization who came to Oblast centers on the front line in the rear. The question to Anton and Anastasia. Ms. Anastasia, will your youth center apply for grant capacities which were announced, including also the and Mr. Anton, that's what we're figuring in implementing the economic independence of young people. We've heard that over 60% of young people hear the word grant for the first time in their life. Now, don't even know how to write an application. Second of all, a young person wants to work since age 16, if not earlier, and they're interested what is there on the community level, how you get youth involved. We're talking about official employment and not wages paid in envelopes, so to say. Do you have advice on this? My answer would be quicker, I think. Thank you very much. We have more than one project being prepared from the Youth Council, Youth Center, from legal entities, physical entities, individual persons. You remember, I asked during the online meeting if you were very upset and tired. Yes, we are preparing them. Thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Anton, please. This is a very in-depth question. I don't know how to answer it in a short and concise manner. The issue is not if they know the word grant, young people, but the question is, do they have the skills to turn their idea into a project to implement this idea? This is what we're working with, have been working with on participatory budget, and try to conduct training for active youth every cycle for those who want to implement their projects. The problem is not in whether they know how the grant cycle works, but on the amount of young people who are ready to take part in this kind of in implementing their ideas. And increasing activity for the youth is the biggest challenge for communities. On employment, this is a large issue. I won't be talking about the envelope situation. I'm sure that young people can find the opportunity to work with businesses, could be delivery services or something like that, service sector, etc. Certainly, it's more related to direct relations without official recognition. And on the programs which can involve such kind of youth, there's not a lot of propositions, and it's unlikely that we'll be able to change that. But at the very least, we want to make more in-depth professional orientation programs and maybe directions of vocational education, informal education, even what you've mentioned, you can start working like an internship by giving the youth the opportunity, the capacity to see opportunities around them. So that's it. Pretty much. Thank you very much, Mr. Anton. I know that Jan has to go. He has informed us beforehand, so let us give him a round of applause. But we do have more questions, so dear colleagues, don't leave just yet. I know that Ukrainian Danish House has a question.
Unfortunately, I don't speak Ukrainian. If someone will be able to help translate.
Я перекладу потім на українську.
My name is Jenny Nielsen, and I work with the Ukrainian Danish Youth House. First of all, thank you so much for this presentation of these results and this interesting discussion. My question goes to the youth houses, funnily enough. First of all, I'm very happy to hear your recognitions of the importance of this. This is also very much the results that we share from our work. I'll try to keep the question simple, but I want to hear from your perspective. What do you see as the main challenges in strengthening youth spaces, youth infrastructure, in particular in the frontline regions? But also, where do you see the opportunities for this growth to continue? Thank you.
Thank you. Я перекладу. Добрий день. Мене
Now, interpretation, translation of what you just said will be provided to those who are in the auditorium and did not have the opportunity to listen to simultaneous interpretation.
Питання щодо викликів. Як можна зараз долати ті виклики, які є, особливо в прифронтових громадах? Можливо, вже є якісь успішні практики, які ви впроваджуєте?
Thank you very much for this question. Well, the work right now pretty much consists entirely of responses to challenges, because the requests, needs and challenges are the same thing for our team pretty much. How to respond? Well, first of all, you have to respond. Sorry for formulating it like that, but because if you poll people and don't do anything as a result of that, then why are you doing? We have to respond to what young people, if they say that they lack, they need professional orientation, we make a program so that makes it so there's enough professional orientation. We won't be able to fix all of the issues that exist in the community, but it's important to respond to them, to these requests. In regards to the challenges we see, in regards to polling, in our community there's not a lot of young people who switch to Ukrainian. In small towns I see, which is my subjective opinion, much less young people switch to Ukrainian than in larger cities, which is a bit of an issue. Although we did create a Ukrainian-speaking environment in our bubble, so to say, a lot of young people have switched to Ukrainian. A lot of youth which really want to do something in the community and is already doing something, these young people have switched immediately, and they influence their environment likewise. In regards to the team, how do we respond to these challenges? We train, we learn. If we see that we are less professional in some regards, then we just start doing it and make it so there are less directions that aren't covered by us, but we have to be very rational with our human resources, finances and capacities within the community. I try to give you a complete answer. If there is everything's clear, then thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? I saw another hand. Two more questions then, and we will then be drawing conclusions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask another question. When we talk about studies, we've seen the background in which we leave the background noise, so to say, certain realities, and how to find keys to motivate young people and instill in them the belief that they can influence something. Because even in our discussion, Mr. Antona said it's unlikely that we change something in regards to youth. And young people live in a society. Sometimes there is a family, older generations. They destroy this faith in young people that they can affect change. Studies show that there is not a lot of trust to official institutions. And I work with university students, and I often encounter that they have a lot of ideas, but without reaching the implementation stage, they don't have a lot of faith that they'll be able to do something and do a good job of it. So you also work with young people. Which advice you would provide to them, such as us grown adults who work in education and public governance, can do to create a conducive climate where young people can do something to strengthen their faith that they can do a lot, actually? Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful question. I think every one of you will have a comment on that. Maybe this is not a question for a specific person. I would like to comment right away. I didn't want to make it sound like we can't do anything. We can do a lot, actually, because otherwise we wouldn't be doing youth programs and cooperate with young people at all. Although it is hard, I have to admit, it really is, and to give the young people, the opportunity to see the potential. Most of them remain in their bubbles, as every one of us, because we are part of the same society. And the issue is how to bring these bubbles together to give them the opportunity to be a part of something larger. In our case, this is about the trust towards institution. But yes, you have asked a question how to bring this information across. It's about cooperation. Trust which is built on cooperation, because really when people come by and start doing something together, they share responsibility and share the fruits of their labor. And the involvement of young people in project management, implementing volunteer programs, tree planting, greenery, etc., allows them to be part of it, shares the activity, the joint responsibility and the results, which I believe is the easiest and the hardest part at the same time. I would also like to respond. I have two theses, so to say. First is an example, and second is the community. Because when we talk about initiatives and we don't see them implemented, this is, the government says we'll do everything, we'll make everything great, but in reality that is not so. So when the Youth Council says, please join us, and here's what we've done already, even if it's very small, if it's just like the one project which has enacted real change in the community. So it's more effective when when our actions speak louder than words, and this really motivates the community when you are within the circle of young people who care about what happens. One statement which we discussed during the coffee break is the role of people in restoration. 78% are ready to involve, and 1% does. Only 1% does. So this thing that they want to, but don't get involved, it really is a challenge for us as youth workers, because we don't want it to be just the 1% for everyone who wants to get involved. So this example, this community where you want to do something, really is important in this regard. I don't think that young people require someone else to make decisions for them, so we need to ask them themselves, and they will tell what they want. and how to best build relationships with them, which programs to suggest, what kind of support. I recalled one initiative, one EU initiative implemented by Ukraine now, and the Ministry of Youth and Sports is responsible for it. It's the Youth Guarantee. And this Friday, on the 20th, we will have a design lab happening where there will be 200 participants, exclusively youth. We sat there with the expert society to see the way of support for methodology for those which don't work, aren't in education or training. We would like to give this to young people themselves, to train something, to suggest something, to get involved in this process. And this is the most important thing, not to make your decision in place of the youths. If we're talking about youth subjectivity, we should stop making decisions for them. So for all of the normative acts were produced from youth councils on all levels. We have Alexander Tus. Could we ask you to get up? Yes, there we go. Well, Alexander is in the team of Youth and Sports Ministry, works in support with supporting youth council. So if you have any questions, need any kind of tips, Alexander is open to respond. Another recommendation is to let them feel small successes. If young people didn't do something that they have came up with, have implemented themselves and benefited from its result, they will always be despondent and will remain in that 1% aforementioned. We have a wonderful program with Nova UA, Restoration UA, together with UNDP, where young people come back to damaged communities, restore youth infrastructure, they train how to do this, learn how to do this themselves, and understand it themselves, what it means to get involved into the reconstruction.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Uliana, Ms. Anastasia, Ms. Anton. I think there's a great summary. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time to take questions. Ask you. That would be a great summary. Go for the studies, develop recommendations, and I would like to thank all our speakers for this discussion, for your recommendation, for your experience. Let's go for a round of applause to all of them. Thank you. Dear friends, our event is almost over, and I would like to thank everyone for your contribution, for being here with us, for your work with youth, for youth. And we do hope that the study will be useful for your teams, for your communities, and will strengthen youth policy, youth work on different levels. I'd like to thank the team of UNDP, which worked on this study, the government, the Sociological Group rating, and all the participants, online, offline, for your active participation in this discussion. Currently, we work on the translation of this big report. So far, it's available in Ukrainian. I think in a couple of weeks it would be available in English. Please share it with your colleagues in the international institution whom you cooperate with. I think it would be interesting for them as well. Thank you very much. This is the end of the event. We have some coffee still waiting for us. Let's continue our informal cooperation. Thank you very much for that.